Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Horses Advocate podcast. This is Dr. Tucker, Geoff Tucker, Doc T, anything you want to call me, but late for dinner. And I think this is going to be kind of a short one, mainly because I've really filled your heads up with a lot of information in the last couple of podcasts. They were complex. I was getting into the structure within the cell, within the mitochondria called electron transport chain, and talking about the importance of NAD becoming NAD plus and throwing off an electron, which charges the batteries, which are continually being depleted as we live. And I tried to apply what we know in humans to all the horses out there so you can make better decisions. But today was an interesting day. I'm driving back from New York down to Florida, and I'm following the blue line, but I always have competing GPSs. I just put on two GPSs. I find that one sometimes has a different way of looking at things than the other. So I listen to them both. Sometimes I prefer one over the other. But I was coming down into New York City and then going across the George Washington Bridge, which is a double-decker, huge bridge. One of the originals, been there forever. I've crossed it a billion times. You can see the Manhattan skyline in the distance, and then you can look up the river, up the Hudson River into upstate New York, and it's pretty awe-inspiring, especially today when it's a beautiful, crystal clear blue skies, high 60 degrees, just a gorgeous day here. So I was watching one GPS and looking at the other, and one GPS keeps shouting, "Get in the right-hand lane." The other GPS is saying, "Take your left-hand turn." And honestly, I was just kind of in the moment, not paying 100% attention. So I listened to the voice. And as I listened to the voice, I passed the exit I always take that loops me around off the Henry Hudson Parkway and onto the George Washington Bridge over to the New Jersey Turnpike and south. Instead, I'm going down the west side of Manhattan with all the buildings in my face and the Hudson River on my other side. And I'm just scooting down there in 3 lanes of traffic. And I know that I'm getting close to the aircraft carrier. Now, if you guys live in any other part of the world, you don't know this, but there's a museum called the Intrepid Aircraft Carrier. It sits right in the Hudson River. It's open to the public. You can walk on there. They have all sorts of airplanes that are from the past that you can crawl over the boat. And I've always wanted to go there. I sometimes see it in aerial shots of New York City. You can't miss it. You could probably even go on GPS, on Google Maps or any map, get the satellite vision and look on the west side and expand it, and you'll finally see this aircraft carrier with these airplanes sitting on the deck. And that's where I was. I'm looking to my right, and I'd say 100, 150 feet away is the butt end of an aircraft carrier. And there's people on the deck. I could see what they're wearing. And I'm looking to the left, and there's New York City. And I have to dive into New York City several blocks and then take a right and go down 11th Avenue, which is, the heart of New York City, one of the many hearts, and then take another left and then zip right and loop around and get into the Lincoln Tunnel that goes underneath the Hudson River over to New Jersey. And as I'm doing this, there's 2 thoughts that come to my mind. One, the last time I drove the Lincoln Tunnel was in my truck driving days when I hauled horses to the Madison Square Garden National Horse Show when it was still held there. And I drove my Mack 18-wheeler off of Manhattan down through the tunnel to go someplace. I forgot where, obviously to New Jersey. And I had my wife with me, believe it or not. Or she wasn't my wife yet. Yeah, that's 1976, a long time ago, right? Ages, so far, so long ago that I completely forgot everything that had happened that day until I was there and brought back all the memories. So, not to take you down nostalgia lane and always trying to teach you guys something that I've learned, this was a turning point for me today because I was stuck in my routine. I was stuck in my path. I knew that I come down this parkway and I take a left and then I loop around and I take the George Washington Bridge and I head south and I'm going home. It's almost automatic. I don't even think about it anymore. And yet I was ripped out of my comfort zone and thrown into the city streets of Manhattan, the largest city in the world. And knowing that I could get through there and get into the Lincoln Tunnel, I'd done it before. I'd taken this tunnel, which is a very small tunnel. It's only 2 lanes and just enough room to fit a semi through. And I'd gone through that driving a semi, so I knew I had no problems. So I knew that I could do it. But there's the other side of me that was very uncomfortable because my routine had been changed. I'd been ripped out of my comfort zone and thrown into something. And the whole time I kept saying, I can do this. This is no big deal. It's not going to hurt me. We're going to be fine. And then I thought about a couple of people I've seen this week who still cannot bring themselves to change the diet of their horse, because this is the way they fed the horses since the beginning of their time with horses. They don't go back as far as 1976 with horses. They've only gone back 10, maybe 20 years. And the changes had already occurred by then. So this is 2022. So in 2002, these people were just starting into horses, and they didn't understand that the way we fed horses in olden times worked well and was effective and efficient. And yet, since that time, there have been 100 or 1,000 different supplements made and ideas that people are saying they need to feed a horse to give them that extra punch to make it through the winter or into the top 10 of their sport or whatever the reason is. And yet, I keep seeing that there's a health problem if we keep doing it the way we're doing it. And just like me feeling very uncomfortable moving out of the pattern I knew and taking one bridge and going down and going through a tunnel, these horse owners, these trainers are stuck where they are because they just don't believe that they can do it another way. And even though it's not working for them doing what they're doing, and even when they are recommending the no grain, adding soybean meal to their students or their clients, and they see it working for those horses, they still have trouble taking that step and moving forward with their own horse, even though they're having either insulin resistance or Cushing's disease, or they're breaking down, they're lame someplace, they're not happy, they've got digestive upsets, and they just can't break out of it. And I'm not too sure exactly what you can do. On the flip side, I had one gal come up to me and she said, I was so excited to know that you were coming to my barn today. I couldn't wait to come out here and say hello and thank you for all the changes. I've done all of them. And I'm seeing such an improvement in my horses. And of course, that makes my heart sing. And then my heart kind of stopped singing when I said, okay, so what do you feed? And she says, well, I feed my horse oats and barley. And I'm like, but oats and barley are a grain. And she says, well, they're not processed grains. And I'm like, somehow I'm not getting the point across that it's the grains themselves and the excess sugar that's causing some of the problems they're seeing in their horses. And no, her horses were good. They're just nice horses. But could they be better? The answer is yes, because they're getting older and you want them to have a longevity and a health span. And one horse has EOTRH. It's looking moderate. It's not mild. It's not advanced, but it's moderate. And she's seeing some other issues that are occurring, like in the hooves. So why isn't she going 100%? She is a health nut. She loves listening about nutrition. And yet, even though I've given her the information for what she should do with the horses, she's not willing to go 100%, not because she's afraid, like the first trainer, but because she hasn't grasped the whole concept that it's no grain. And people don't understand what a grain is. A grain is a seed from a grass, basically, from a plant. It's a soft seed. And she was also feeding vegetable oil or canola oil, I think. And I said, well, that's a seed oil, and those are inflammatories in humans. So I'm just guessing that they're also inflammatory in all animals, and we shouldn't be feeding them. And then I asked her, does she know where the oils or the fats come from in a horse's diet? And she looked at me with a blank stare. So this woman has had 6 months to read the material or purchase or gain access to the course. I mean, the information is either for free or I organize it in a nice way that they can see me on video doing this. And I'd spent a lot of time with her 6 months ago explaining this. But I realized that when you're used to taking one route and somebody comes along like a GPS and suggests to take another route, some of us will say, well, I'm not doing that. I mean, I know my route. I know it works. I'm going to take it. Even though there's potholes and there's traffic and congestion, at least it's a pain that I know. But then when the GPS says take another route, you're like, huh, well, that's different. I haven't taken that route since 1976. And this GPS says it's going to be shorter. So why not trust it and do it? And there are some people out there listening to this podcast saying, I'll trust the GPS. I'll do the different route. I know it's something uncomfortable. It's out of my comfort zone. I'm taking a route that I don't know, but it's a beautiful sunny day. The traffic isn't that bad for New York City. It's not like a downpour, rain, fog, night, whatever. There's no hindrances. So why not just do it? And even then, with the guidance of a GPS, some people say, well, I kind of know the area. I want to just go south, and then I want to go west and go under the Hudson River and get to New Jersey. And we miss our turn. And then we get lost. We get tangled up. We take the wrong, we're not listening to the directions that the GPS is giving us, that, you know, millions of dollars people have invested into making these GPSs work. And we decide that we think we know better. And so we take a wrong turn, and then we start cussing because it's not working. I should have taken the old route. The old route, at least I knew where I was going. I'd be able to go over the Hudson and get over to the other state and head south. But now I got enticed with this new information, and I went down the road, and it's not working for me because I didn't listen to the directions. So there's a lot of analogy I got from this exploration I did, and what most horse people are going through in changing their minds to do something different. So if you haven't seen it, I wrote a blog saying, I just want to do the best for my horses. And that's a blog that basically talks about the infodemic that we have, the information epidemic. It's a contracted word, infodemic. Merriam-Webster is recognizing it now. We have so much information and misinformation that we can't make a decision, whether it's politics or our ideas of COVID or anything, especially when it comes down to feeding horses. We're being overwhelmed. What works? I mean, somebody's saying I should be feeding flax because it has omega-3s, and I heard that omega-3s are really important, and I want to make sure that my horse gets omega-3s because I want to do the best for my horse. Or whatever. I mean, you can fill in the blanks to anything that you've heard, but the bottom line is I want to do the best for my horse seems to be the overriding, compelling reason that most horse owners do what they do for their horse. I heard the expression just today, well, I want to do the best for my horse. And I say, well, you know, most people agree with you. They want to do the best for their horse, but because of information overload and abundance of misinformation out there, and the agenda-driven information that's out there, meaning people are trying to sell you something, we fall into the trap of accepting what they're saying is what we need, and it's not. Yeah, it gets frustrating for all of us. We want to do the best for our horses. We want to take the shortest route from here to there. We want to get there in one piece. We want ease of traffic. We don't want blocks in the road. We want smooth sailing. And then all of a sudden something comes along and boom. Well, another story that occurred today as I'm driving is I'm trying to plow through Tony Robbins' new book. I forgot the name of it already. Life Force. That's what it's called, Life Force, where he's gotten all these experts to come together and talk to us about what is important about getting a health span and a lifespan. And I thought this would be really good because Tony Robbins, he's been the leader for so many people and changing their lives around and making their brains work a little bit better. So I've been forcing my way through it, and I get a couple hours into it and I have to just like shut them off, because what I'm finding everyone does is they grab something that seems to make sense to them and they run with it, saying, this is what we need to do. And then Tony Robbins, of course, layers a layer on top of that. And he says, oh, and by the way, some of you guys don't know who Tony Robbins is, which is just amazing because he's been around for 30 years and he's literally a giant, and he's a motivational speaker that just about everybody knows. But I've run across some people that don't know him. But he layers over the top of what he thinks we should be doing as humans to eat and to be healthy. Well, everybody's different. Everyone has different genetics. They have different epigenetics. They have a different microbiome. I mean, you could be an Inuit from Alaska, or you could be a Samoan from American Samoa, and your diets are completely different. You know, it's just, and yet both have learned how to live. And I've said probably for a decade now, how do you feed an Arabian horse, a Mongolian horse, and a Paso Fino all living in Biloxi, Mississippi? Because each one does have a different genetic makeup. Each one does have a different microbiome, and that's been passed on from their parents to them and then added to by whatever environment they've been in. You know, they're in a pasture in Europe, and all of a sudden by a plane the next day, they're sitting here in someplace in America, and everything goes crazy, and we think it's simple. And as much as I love Elon Musk and how much he wants to get us humans onto Mars, I said, have you asked the trillions of bacteria that you're taking with you, the viruses, the parasites that are in, on, around us? Are you asking them, hey, how'd you like to go to Mars too? Because it is a shock. And we are living in a symbiotic relationship, meaning, you know, they have to agree with us and we have to agree with them. Otherwise, we're reaching for the Pepto-Bismol or worse. So same with our horses. They're happy as they are. And then we breed them to other horses, and then we ship them around the world, and then we put them in stall confinement and leave them behind a fence. And that's just the way it is. I mean, I'm not advocating to releasing every horse and, you know, never touching a horse again. That's not going to work. They're all going to be hit by cars and lots of damage, and it's no good. I'm always asking how we can help horses thrive in a human world, and they are no doubt in a human world. And as we get them in the human world, we have to understand what their needs are. And their nutritional needs include not only carbohydrates, but fats and proteins, as well as minerals, water, and air. And where are they getting the protein from? They're not getting the broad variety of amino acids that includes the ones that they have to eat. They're getting excess oil through other plants, when in reality, all their fat is coming from the microscopic breakdown of cellulose. And then they're getting too much carbohydrates every day of the year round. And just like humans, that's what's creating the obesity epidemic, the insulin resistance, the diabetes epidemic, the asthma, the Cushing's, the breakdown of the top line, the hooves, the hair coat, all of it. It all boils down to one disease. And a lot of people are now recognizing the fact that when you look at all these diseases in humans, doctors are looking at cardiovascular disease and they're saying, okay, we're going to fix it by doing these things. And then they look at renal problems or metabolic syndrome or respiratory syndrome, and they're all punching at it, trying to solve that problem. But in reality, from my position, from all the decades I've been with horses, it's all boiling back down to the one thing, and they're being overfed and high in carbohydrates and not enough variety of protein. And nobody's looking at it. I mean, I'll listen to podcast after podcast. I just listened to a podcast. It was an interview of a researcher who had looked at a small group of horses that were given an injury to their tendon, the superficial digital flexor tendon. And then they looked at how it healed over time, over a year's time. And she was very, honest in saying, look, we don't know if the surgical intervention that created this damage is the same as, let's say, them being overworked at a racetrack. I mean, the damage could be different. We understand that. But what we did was we looked at the modalities we have. We have ultrasound, we have MRI, and a few of us actually have CT scans to look at these injuries and try to understand what's making up these injuries, why they're breaking down, and are they healing correctly? And she said the biggest takeaway she had out of the whole study of a year, and as she said, a section of my soul went into this. She said, when you ultrasound a tendon and it looks like it's getting smaller, it could be a lot larger than your ultrasound is showing. And she could be absolutely wrong with the ultrasound. And I said, well, yeah, duh. I mean, everybody knows that. You ultrasound a tendon, they say, oh, it's looking good. And you send it back to work and bam, they get lame again right there, because ultrasound isn't telling you the truth, because they're limited in what they can do. But nowhere in this whole study where they said you should get a badge just to make through the materials and methods, nowhere in there did they talk about the food that they were feeding these horses. They just grabbed these horses out of some research thing, and they're all being fed grain, and they're probably not getting enough protein. And there's no way you can take a blood test to find out if they have all the amino acids. It's impossible. So, but they're not feeding the horse for, let's say, 12 months, a broad variety of essential amino acids that we're seeing a beautiful hoof, beautiful top line, beautiful hair coat, and they don't have any gut inflammation. There's no signs of gut inflammation. The microbiome's fine. Now let's do the tendon study and see what happens. And they could probably get a completely different result, because now the horse has materials to actually go in and make the repair. Same with hooves. Everyone's talking about laminitis, and they're trying to make the laminitis studies and what causes it and what's the tissue damage and the venography, where they put a dye in the hoof so they can see where all the veins are, where the blood flow is. And then they look at the different angles that they apply to the hoof, and on and on and on. And nowhere does anybody come in and say, well, we decided that we'd give these horses, a high quality protein for a year. And we measured the consistency of the hoof, and it was measured this way. And then at that point, then we challenged them to try to create laminitis. And then maybe they find that they couldn't even make laminitis because now they have a healthy hoof. But nobody's doing that. It's not glitzy. I mean, can you imagine Purina? Sorry, Purina, I'm pulling you out of the crowd, but your name is plastered over everything we do as equine vets. Our credentials to gain access to the meetings is on a lanyard that has Purina written all over it. Same with Nutrina, Cargill, same with Blue Seal, same with Southern States. I guess that's Nutrina. But everyone's in the game, and they take up huge real estate in the vendors area, the supplements, and the grains, and they're all got skin in the game. And what if the veterinary profession said, you know what, we're going to stop looking and trying to fix all this stuff, testing for insulin resistance or testing for ACTH and then putting horses on Prosend or Pergolide, Why don't we start looking at their health and trying to prevent this? And that's just something that makes sense to me. I mean, you as an individual listening to this, if you knew that there's something that you could do, which is eat right, get 8 hours of sleep, get some exercise every day, and drink half your body weight in fluid ounces of water, meaning if you weighed in pounds, do fluid ounces. I don't know what you metric people would do. I'm sure I could convert it for you. But the point is, if you weigh 200 pounds, you should be having 100 ounces of water a day. Water actually helps drive everything in your body to make sure that it's working right. So, and 8 hours of sleep. I mean, some of you people say, well, I can't sleep. I try to fall asleep. I have insomnia. I have a CPAP. I'm already overweight. I can't breathe right. On and on and on. The list goes. But what if we were able to get you to breathe right so you could sleep well? What if we gave you the foods that really drive you? What if we were fed the way we were supposed to eat, which is a meal every once in a while, instead of 14 meals in one day because we're passing a Taco Bell and they have a special? Same thing with a horse. What would happen if we started to become healthier by honoring the system that's been made for millions of years? And if we were able to do that, it would be life-changing. Kind of like me going down the different road this morning to take a different route to get over the other side of the river. We're all going to get to the other side of the river. Some of us are going to get there and we're going to be sick and die. We've seen it in our horses. They're 12, 14, 16 years old and they're on medications. They're already lame. They can't produce, or they suddenly die. We want horses that are healthy till they're 30, 35 years old. And one day we come out there and they're dead. That would be ideal. They didn't suffer. We all would love that. And we have no, magic wand. We can't figure it out. But we do know that what we're doing is causing a lot of other problems. And sometimes you're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off. You're going to have to wince and say, okay, I'm going to trust the other GPS. I'm going to take a different route. I'm going to take this information and say, they're trying to get my horse to where I want it to be. And the stuff I'm doing right now isn't getting me there. The stuff I'm doing now is giving me digestive upset. It's giving me free fecal water, or what I call the squirts. It's getting me a horse that doesn't want to be have its girth tightened, or it doesn't like to be brushed, or doesn't like to be shipped because it just balks and says, I'm not getting on that machine or in that vehicle. That's just going to get me sick. So you have to ask yourself, not just what if, but why not? I mean, how's what you're doing working for you? And that's the question I asked my blog. I just want to do the best for my horses. We all want to do the best for our horses. But you have to be honest and ask yourself, is what I'm doing now really the best for my horses? And this overwhelming time of information where we're all kind of trying to get the right answers, you see it in everything in the news. I just met a Tesla driver at a Charger, and we're gung-ho about our Teslas. They're the greatest vehicle. Oh my gosh, we bought them almost the same year. Everything's fine. And then I say, I'm from Florida. He says, I can't stand your governor. And I'm like, well, why? He says, because he's blah, 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 name calling. And then I say, we are in Delaware. That's where he lives. And I said, so what does Delaware have over Florida? And he says, well, we don't have any state income tax. And I said, well, we don't have it in Florida either. So take that off the table. What else? He says, well, we have beaches and retirement homes. I'm like, Florida has beaches and retirement homes everywhere. So take that off the table. What's left? We have got a good governor and your governor's stupid. And I'm like, okay. So there's no willingness to look for similarities or differences that we could meet on and say, yes, you have a good point of view. I understand that. Let's go. No, he had cognitive dissonance, which just means he believes one thing and he's not willing to discuss things. He's not willing to ask questions. He's not willing to dig down to find the truth. He just knows what he knows. And that's where it is in horse nutrition. You know what you know. It's not working, but there's another answer coming down the pike, and it's too uncomfortable to listen to it or to understand it completely. So we shut it down, or we poke at it. We don't actually try it. We don't do a great job of listening to the directions. We aren't willing to try it on at least one horse out of maybe 10 in the barn and see what it does. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to be here to reach everybody. I'm just out here to reach a few. And with that, I just want to really jump in with my most sincere thanks and gratitude for all of you who have at least tried this, who have figured it out that it works, who have gone out and told others to say, I didn't believe it would work, but I tried it. And now 2 weeks later, I've got a different horse. It's a willing partner. The manure's looking good. Or it's starting to not buck anymore. It's a comfortable ride. There are so many different things that could change if you just gave it 2 weeks and it doesn't cost you a dime. Just stop feeding anything but what nature had intended the horse, what the horse developed over millions of years to digest. And that's the plants that are on the ground, basically the grasses. And because we put a fence up and the horse can't migrate to find a variety of different plants, we have to accommodate and make sure that they're getting that variety of plants, or we have to supplement with things that they're missing, which in this case is number one, the amino acids that are missing in the plants that you feed. And stop feeding hay round the clock in addition to pasture because they're getting way too much sugar. It's like you going into the candy store and saying, well, I'm only eating, 5 pounds of candy a day, and that's it. That's my diet. And so there's no protein and there's very little fat and it's all sugar. And you're going to fail on that kind of diet. So that's it. My sincere thanks to all of you who have reached out and gotten some advice and listened and are willing to try and have seen the results. And I'm so grateful for all of you. For those of you who haven't or want to read more or haven't heard from me before, this is the first time, head on over to The Horse's Advocate. Don't forget the word the, T-H-E, thehorsesadvocate.com. And look at the No Grain Challenge. Look at all the topics I have in there. Look at all the blogs. All the information there is free. You can get a lot of good information. Those of you who decide to become a member, thank you so much. The money you put into that is basically supporting this mission. I have probably plans for the next 30 years. Yes, that would be 100, to keep talking about this and trying to get the message out so more and more people can help their horses. And once we do that together, we're going to make a difference in the world for our horses who are basically working for us. Some of them are leading lives of quiet desperation. And we want that to go away. We want them to be happy, healthy, and productive citizens in our world. Anyway, that's it. Become a member of the Horse's Advocate. That way you can comment, you can contact me. But as far as the podcast goes, go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this, whatever platform you've decided to listen to podcasts on, there's usually some sort of comment section there. Leave a 5-star review, hopefully, and any ideas that you want me to talk about in the future, because I have so many ideas. I really sometimes get stuck in picking one. So why don't you help me? All right, Doc T, I got to get back on the road, more driving to do. And I appreciate all of you spending your time here with me. Bye. Hey, everyone, Doc T here. Thank you for listening to my content. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up, and give a star review? However it's presented to you, I want you to do that. There's 2 reasons. The first, of course, is to improve this product. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, what I can improve upon, what topics you want me to cover. But more importantly, it's also going to help others find me. And by doing that, you are now engaged in this mission of helping horses thrive in a human world. By you helping, we can reach others. And that I would be so grateful for. And remember, go to thehorsesadvocate.com for updates on this information. Thehorsesadvocate.com. And again, thank you so much for being here. Doc T out.